I'm Nan Simonsen. I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach and the author of Aging Powerfully, which I wrote when I was about to turn 70. That was about 5 years ago, to celebrate 70 being the beginning of decades of good health, because I had discovered as a health and wellness coach with a lifestyle medical practice that if we follow the pillars of lifestyle as medicine, one of which is whole food, plant-based dietary lifestyle. And I did that. My husband and I have been plant-based exclusively going on 7 years now. And so I'm always looking for some great recipes. And I also am quite influenced by what I've learned from Dr. Brooke Goldner, because I have done her protocol and her rapid recovery group, understanding the value and the importance of raising our omega-3 fatty acid ratio over our 6, or keeping them even, or letting the 6 being a little higher. You have these essential fatty acids, 3 and 6 and 9, not so much. But the body doesn't create those. And the omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. The omega-6s are an important part of our immune system. But when they're out of balance, they become inflammatory. Balance should be a 1-to-1 ratio, 1-to-3 maybe on the 6s. Maybe at the far end, 1-to-9 on the 6s, but no, because the omega-6 fatty acids are in all of the seed and the vegetable oils except olive oil, and not so much canola oil, and in very high ratios. And because in all processed foods you get so many of the oils that are loaded with omega-6s, that the standard American diet, which is 70% processed food, is in the 1 to 20 or 30 or 40 range. And that's why we're inflamed, and that's why, quite frankly, we're so sick with chronic diseases. At 75, I'm not. And I've been paying attention to this, but when even feeling healthy, but having a little bit of inflammation going on and a challenge with an autoimmune disease, I took her protocol. I saw that the pain I had from a structural problem on my knee, and that is a very badly torn meniscus, even that didn't hurt when I was strictly on her protocol, because I was so hypernourished that the inflammation was at its very least. So I'm going to be why am I going on and on about this? Because I realized, and it was relatively recently, that there's a high ratio of omega-3 to 6s in flaxseed, chia seed, in the fish population and their oils, but I don't eat any animal at all. Everything I eat is plant-based for a lot of other good reasons. But what I didn't realize, and I knew that in the greens, let me show you something. I'm way off track, but I'm on a roll, so I'm gonna take this and then I'll show you. No, let me do this. Let me get this started. This recipe is a recipe for a chickpea and butternut squash soup. And it's super simple. A bunch of spices, but that's it. And some onions. And I want to mention, because I don't know if I mentioned, that I don't use oil in my cooking. Why? Because most of the oils other than olive oil are very high in omega-6s. Olive oil can't be heated over 375 without being broken down, so I don't use olive oil for cooking, and we really shouldn't at high heat. It's more of a splash over, and I don't do that. Plus, at almost 75, I work hard, no, I don't work hard, to maintain a steady weight, which I have for years now, because I don't throw oil on everything. I can eat a bowl of this soup oh, for maybe 300 calories. If I had put 2, 3, 4 tablespoons, which recipes call for, in the soup, it would have gone up by 100, 200 calories. You do that with every meal, every time you cook, with every recipe, because almost all recipes are loaded with oil. And it's very hard to maintain the weight you want and still eat, well, as much as I like to. I like a big full plate of food, and I don't want to think that it's a bunch of oil that I couldn't taste anyway. So that's my story. Okay, so the onion went into an empty pot, and this is the Maui onion, which is like a sweet onion. It doesn't matter, it could be a yellow onion, it could have been a red onion. And I'm letting it weep, and then it will caramelize as it does that and turn a light brown. But the thing I wanted to show you, and I'll put this link in here, this is from wikipedia.org, fatty acid ratio chart. It shows the ratio of foods, not only the ratio, but the milligrams of omega-6s, milligrams of omega-3s, and then their ratios, the 6s first and then the 3s to follow. In most nuts, we know nuts are healthy. For example, the ratio of almonds, because almonds are very low in omega-3, is over 2,000 to 1. So if I'm really working hard to get my omega-3s up, I'm going to leave almonds alone for now. However, the chia seeds and the flax seeds are, for example, 1 to 3. In other words, they are, the chia seeds are higher in 3s. The flax seeds are even higher in 3s. People think hemp seed is a good source of omega-3. Well, it is. It's got a lot of omega-3, but the ratio is the ratio is basically 3 to 1 of 6s to 3s. So it's heavier in the omega-6s. So I won't do that while I'm on a healing protocol, on an anti-inflammatory protocol. Hemp is a good seed, but I just won't do that. And of the actual nuts, walnut is the highest of the nuts that we typically eat in omega-3s, and still it is higher in 6s than 3s by about a ratio of 4 to 1. Okay, so why did I go into all of this as I'm talking about foods, typical foods? Well, the greens, and this is one of the reasons her protocol, which is what I call a fine point on anti-inflammation, even greater than all the other right things I did with a whole food plant-based diet, is that, for example, almost all the deep leafy greens, arugula, the lettuces, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, spinach, kale, collard greens, they're all, almost, well, every one of them except maybe, well, wow, chard is way up on omega-3s over omega-6s. So the greens are where you're going to get a lot of omega-3s without the omega-6s. But what I didn't know, and I could have just started out saying that, but as I said, I'm on a roll, is that some of the squashes are very high in, very high in omega-3s, and certainly higher, not necessarily very high, but higher in 3s than 6s. In other words, low on the omega-6s. And they include zucchini. Would never have guessed that. To me, zucchini is almost a benign food because it's not really as high in nourishment and phytonutrients and phytochemicals as, let's say, kale or spinach. But now I know it's high on the omega-3s, or at least it has that higher balance. But another one is butternut squash, and another one is acorn squash. So when I saw this recipe, all of that to say, and I hope you got a bit of an education out of this, and I'm watching this brown or turn golden, and no, I haven't had to put oil in here. And I will mention that this is a double of the recipe. So that was a lot of onion because I doubled the recipe. My feeling has always been, if I'm going to take the time to make the mess, I'm going to get something more than just one or maybe 2 meals out of it. I intend to put some of this in my freezer library, so when I am in a busy day, or maybe I'm going to be gone for the evening for a meeting, I can pull something out of that, defrost it, and my husband has lunch or dinner, or we have dinner. So I am going to be back to you in just a moment, because this is just about ready for me to put the other ingredients in, which include the spices, and I'm going to grab them and be right back. Okay. So the onion has a nice golden brown to it, and I'm going to, before it gets any more brown, and I don't really want it to brown, with this ingredient in it, and that is chopped garlic. As I said, this is double the recipe, so this is 6 cloves, and they were big, fat, fresh cloves of garlic. And the reason I say I don't want it to brown, I want it to cook a little bit, take the edge off the garlic. But if garlic gets very brown, it becomes bitter, and we don't want that. And I'm going to let that cook for just a minute, and then I'm going to add spices such as cumin, cinnamon, and coriander. And I may, on my own, and if I do, I'll put this in the notes, because I think I would like this in it, and it's not part of the recipe, put in some smoky paprika. That makes it very Tunisian or Moroccan. These are spices that are, imaginative. It's a great combination. And with the sweet of the butternut sauce, this is going to be terrific. Okay, I'm going to put the sauce, the spices in, and then I'm going to what you call toast them. And that is that just for about a minute, I'm going to keep stirring. They're sticking to the bottom a bit. And if you could smell this, this is the spices lightly toast. It brings out their flavor, and it's going to really set the rest of the dish up beautifully. So now what I'm adding to this, until the squash becomes tender, is butternut squash. And I'll show you something about the squash in a minute. Let me get this stirred in. Tomato, couple of cans, but again, I've doubled the recipe of diced tomato. And my own homemade broth. I pull it, remember I mentioned my freezer library, I pull it out of the freezer library, and at first I was only going to make a single recipe that even has some ice still in it. I had this dated and the name of what's in there, because you can't tell one frozen thing from the other, quite frankly. And then I decided to double it, and I had to defrost another one. So I have my homemade broth from scraps that I put in the freezer in a 1-gallon baggie, and when that's filled, things with like celery and onion and the ends of green onions, and anyway, I even have a video on that in my YouTube channel. And the garbanzo beans are gonna wait, because the only thing they have to do for this recipe is to warm up at the end, and then I'll stir in some cilantro. So I'm going to bring you that, or back for that, but I'm gonna give this, let me take a look, I'm gonna give this about 30 minutes to cook, which is perfect, because we'll be eating in about 40 minutes. This is, actually that's not so, this gives it time to even sit for just a bit and kind of settle. It is 4:30, this is a Monday, and what I do on Monday is I do a lot of batch cooking. So I just finished batch cooking beets that I put in my chopped salad and potatoes that my husband gets all week long with his open-faced avocado sandwich, just piled up and open-faced because it gives that much more room to pile things on. And I have portobello mushroom that I'm going to bake and then put some a brown rice mixture in for him. But I'm doing her protocol to kind of relieve a little bit of soreness from my knee. So I do that from time to time when I really want to hit home with just the most nutritious foods I can get. I'll do her protocol, Dr. Goldner's protocol, for a little bit. And that her protocol is high raw. So, and with greens, flaxseed chia seed for the omega-3s, and that's where this focus is, and plenty of water and massive amounts of raw vegetables. And so anyway, so I'll be adding this a little later. I'll be back to you in just a bit to show you the end result, and I hope you got something out of this. Consider subscribing to my channel. Give me a thumbs up if you liked what you saw. Consider Aging Powerfully. It's a good read about lifestyle as medicine. As a matter of fact, the word powerfully is an acronym for 10 lifestyle modalities that will help us live and age with power. And it's a lot more fun to do that than to start, rather than squaring the curve, live, and then when our body has just had it, boom, pass away quickly, as opposed to what you see so much in this country, people in their 50s and 60s on bags of medication because their body is giving out, because this processed food culture and the fatty foods and the fatty meat culture and the fast foods and DoorDashes of who knows what people get when they buy that way. All of that is not helping us age well. Cooking at home, knowing what's going in your food does. And speaking of that, I mentioned the butternut squash. If you're not familiar with butternut squash, quite often it's more of a bulb in the back and a thin neck. Well, I found this one this is the other half of part of what went into here. Truth be told, I was at Costco, bought the big container of cubed butternut squash, brought it here and cubed it just a little finer because some of the pieces were huge, and realized that I didn't have enough to double the recipe. I would have been fine if I hadn't decided to double. So I ran to our greengrocer. I actually have one of those, this family that opened up a little store in a strip mall of vegetables and fruits, and they're marvelous. And I ran there and they had this, so I used half of it, but I wanted to show you what I do with this and show you something else. This one, because it wasn't the big bulb at one end, had just the tiniest bit of seeds, and typically a butternut squash can have a whole big belly of seeds and then a big opening that is, well, just air. Well, air once you cut it open. So what I did is I brought this home and put it in the microwave for 2 minutes to soften the skin a little bit. And then I have a very strong, I like this brand, it's Titan, Titan, and it's a very strong peeler. And I just peeled it like that and then cut it and cubed it. So wanted to show you that, and I'll do the rest of this now that you've seen it. And I'll be back to you in just a bit. It's dinner time. I want to show you the soup. It's just beautiful, and it smells. I've spent time in Morocco and in well, South Africa, all over, and Turkey and Egypt and Israel and Jordan. I'm going on, and I love Middle Eastern and South African food. I added more chickpeas. I decided this was brothy enough to be thicker with our protein source. And I'm going to And this is also something that you would find in Moroccan recipes. I have a bag of shredded kale from Trader Joe's. I'm gonna put a handful in here. Well, let me show you the soup as is. Excuse me. It would be fine as is with just a little bit of chopped, well, cilantro. But I love to add additional greens, additional nourishment to everything. And I'm going to stir in that handful of kale, which I like just as much as the cilantro. And I'll put in a little bit more. There we go. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. And it's going to soften just being in there before we eat. We have a artichoke on the table that we're going to have. And no, I don't dip the leaves in oil. My husband likes a vegan ranch that I have, and I use one of Dr. Goldner's dressings. Look at this. Let me turn this down. Isn't that a beauty? And it smells luscious. And I did add some smoky paprika. I could have added some saffron. I could have had a ball with this. As it is, it doesn't need anything more. This is going to be perfect. So I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I'll cool this down up. You know what? I'm going to show you a trick. Into my freezer drawer, because when I say I'm going to cool this down, we're going to serve it, but I want to get this in the refrigerator tonight. It's 5:30. What am I going to do? It's really, really hot. This is a silicone bag. You can find these in a number of sizes. This one is, I don't even know the size, but it probably holds about 3 cups of water, maybe 4, but I think it's more like 3. Keep it in the freezer. When I make something like this, when I'm finished serving everything I'm going to serve, I will plunk this down in. This ice will defrost as the soup is cooling down. And by, I don't know, in a couple of hours, a few hours, I'm gonna have soup cool enough to put into containers to put in my freezer. So I thought I'd show you that because it's a really handy trick and I saw it from somebody else. Have a great day. I know I'm going to. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.